a wonderful thing that we can fellowship together, and then it's another wonderful thing that we can fellowship together and study more about God's Word and even what's happening in the rest of the world to allow us to understand God's sovereignty in here. And that's why we are doing these studies of these other empires and nations that were around during biblical times, of course, because it should increase your understanding of God's sovereignty, while the secular world can think, hey, we're doing this and this is because of our power and our kings. When you see that God has prophesied to all these things that were going to happen, and then they happen with people that have no desire to worship him and obey him, it just reminds us and encourages us that our God is in full control of all things. And regardless of what happens in this world, we can look and say everything that happens because God willed it to happen. It didn't happen any other way other than God's hand of faithfulness ordaining it to happen. Even if it's something terrible, right? Even if it's something bad, we trust what God tells us, that he will work everything out for good for those that love him and are called according to his purposes. And so as we study a empire like Greece and understand the impact that it made, I want you to keep in mind that God told us this was going to happen. As weird as it seems, as unlikely as it seems, he told us that. And I want to remind you that by giving you a little review of where we have been. Review. I was going to say a different word, but it came out wrong. So let's review. Assyrian Empire. We talked about that before, right? That was really the first real empire that we've seen take the face of the earth and conquer and take over. And they affected Israel up in the north, and because they were the one to take them into captivity. And so you have this Assyrian Empire that seemed like they were untouchable, right? They were the ones that couldn't be stopped. They were so powerful. All of their kings were the ones that controlled pretty much everything that was going on. So they thought. And then we have the Babylonian Empire comes in, and they completely take over, right? They take over Assyria. The Babylonian little city started off small, and then all of a sudden it blew up and it got big, and they took over everything that Assyria had and more. And they looked like they were the ones that were in charge. They were the ones that were going to rule for the rest of the time. They took Judah, the southern tribes, into captivity, and they were in charge. And then out of nowhere, we get what's happening up north, Media and Persia. Persia takes over, and you have people like King Cyrus, which God said way back in Isaiah that he was going to have someone named Cyrus. And I imagine when that was first prophesied, it's like, what, who? But God knew the whole time. He had a individual named Cyrus that he would use as his vessel and instrument for his good purposes. Cyrus would free the Jews and bring them out of captivity and allow them to go back and rebuild the temple and rebuild the temple walls, where we get Ezra, Nehemiah, and that whole story going on there. All of that is happening with the Persian Empire. And the Persian Empire seems so powerful that they cannot be stopped. I mean, they got all the power, they got the numbers, they have the big armies, everything. And so they look unstoppable. And then, of course, what we're going to study today, you have the Greek Empire comes in, and little, small Greek Empire that started, it takes over. And God said it would take over, and he allows us to see that he's sovereign over all this. At some point in time, we'll go back and we'll talk about Egypt as well. We got that on the docket at some point this year. And then we'll also talk about what happens after the Greek Empire, where the Roman Empire takes over and takes us into the New Testament. So we'll continue to work sort of on the outskirts of what's going on within the Bible, but what's happening in the rest of the world. This gives us context to let us know our God is in full control of all things. So let's talk about the Greek Empire, because there's a lot that you need to know, and there's a ton that you can get lost in when it comes to the Greek Empire, but we're going to focus our time and attention on a specific area that has to do with the Bible. more so than just all of Greece in general. So we'll take the same approach that we normally take, look at some key facts, including what does the Bible have to say about Greece. We'll look at the rise of the empire. We'll look at the fall of the empire, the impact today, and takeaways from Greece. So I split this up into two. So really what we'll get through today is through the rise of the empire, and I'll leave the fall of the empire and the impact that Greece, the Greek Empire has on us still today, and the takeaways, I'll leave that for the next time that we study this in a few weeks. But let's look at this map first and understand Greece. And when we say the Greek Empire, we got to know where it is and we got to know what we're talking about. Because if you just say, I want to know about Greece, there's a lot of different areas that you can go to. And even as we studied Persia, there's a lot about Greece that is talked about. That's not what we're going to talk about today, because that wasn't really the Greek Empire that expanded and took over all of this side of the globe. We're not talking about the one that Persia was attacking, and that was right in Athens. So if you remember, they went to Athens, and I told you towards the end the reason that Persia was defeated and Greece even stood a chance is because how they're geographically located in sort of these bays, right? You can't just flood them and overwhelm them with foot soldiers, right? You have to go in on ships, and they were very well prepared for that. They had the best naval power in the entire globe at the time, right? And so you look at where Athens is, and point that out right here. So, are we working? No, maybe they're a little faint, but right there, smack dab in the middle, you see Athens, right? See if we work better over there. No, we don't work. We're faded. Whatever, that's fine. You see where Athens is right in the middle of your page. So that is what we talked about last time with Persia, and so when you look at this Greco-Persian war that was going on for 50 years, a lot of it had to do with Athens, where they were, right? And even Sparta, right? You think about Sparta and even the movie Spartans, right? Or 300, and they talk about the Spartans. They had this powerful military army, right? These foot soldiers that they were trained and they were powerful, right? They would take hundreds of soldiers and they would be able to defeat sometimes 100,000 soldiers coming from Persia because they were that strong individually, pound for pound. And then, of course, like I said, you have Athens that had the naval system that Persia couldn't really knock them off. They couldn't defeat them, even though they were 10 times the size that Athens was or Sparta was. But that's not what we're talking about when we talk about the Greek Empire. What you have to focus in on, because if you just put Greece, ancient Greece, it's going to tell you a lot about Athens and Sparta and all these other places, but all the attention needs to go to Macedonia. That's where the empire started. That's where the expansion started. When we think about Alexander the Great, when we think about Philip of Macedon, that's where it's coming from. It's coming from Macedonia. And so Greek Empire, right, when you start to talk about the Greek influence, it starts in Macedonia and then it spreads from there. So that's what we're going to focus our attention on is Macedonia, which some scholars and even historical references might not even consider Macedonia as part of Greek. It's in the region of Greece, but it's not really Greece, right? Greece, it looks at below where Athens is and Sparta is and down in that area, but some consider it part of the Greek region, and so that's where we'll look at. But here's what I want you to see. Again, the Greco-Persian War, you have the Persian Empire in the pink area up there, and like I told you before, Macedonia wasn't even something that was really talked about when you think about the Greco-Persian wars that happened for 50 years, right? They're going from Persian Empire all the way over here, Darius and his group, and they're going down here to fight Athens down here, right? The Battle of Marathon down there. You got Sparta down here. All the action is happening down here, right? Macedonia sits up top, and they're more of a vassal state, right? So they're compliant with everything Persia is doing, but there's no action happening in Macedonia during this time when all of the fighting was happening between the Greeks and the Persians. So they weren't on the scene, but that's who we're talking about, okay? The Bible mentions Greece a few times. I'll show you that here in just a second. But when the Bible mentions Greece, it's talking about coming out of Macedonia, that region of Greece, not just, Athens or anything else. It's specifically talking about Macedonia. And here's why, because here's the coverage that ended up being conquered by Macedonia, right? The Greeks, Alexander the Great. By the time he was done, this was the Greek Empire. It took over everything down all the way as far south as Egypt and all the way as far east, all the way to the border of India, right? All in 13 years, right? So it didn't take Alexander much time, but a lot of that was because of what his father paved the way for him to do. And when he hit the ground running, and he took over all of this area that we're looking at right here. But really, again, Macedonia is where it started. Pella is where he was born and raised. And so from there, we get spread all the way out east and conquering everything down south to Egypt and out to India. So that's what we're going to talk about, the Macedonian portion of ancient Greek. That's what we need to focus on and really understand. But let's talk about the Bible, because I mentioned that the Bible mentions Greece a couple of times. But you have to know where you're looking to find it, because, again, this is not a time that's happening in the Bible. It's through prophecy, and it's in the book of Daniel. So the book of Daniel talks to us about a nation, Greece, that's going to come on the scene, and they're going to take over. Doesn't make sense right now, because throughout the book of Daniel, you have the Babylonian Empire with Nebuchadnezzar and team, and then you get a little bit of Cyrus in there, and you get the Persian Empire in there in Daniel. You don't get any time of when Greece was in control. They were the world power, but it speaks about it often. Matter of fact, if we think about the Greece Empire, it occurred during the 400 silent years, during the intertestamental period. So if you go to First Maccabees, Second Maccabees, then you hear specifics about the Greek Empire. But I wouldn't dare put that on here and call it scripture, because it's not. But that's where you'll find it, right? And you'll find more. And we'll talk a little bit about that the next time we're together, about that, the intertestamental period and what was happening during that time, and we'll be able to pull some historical evidence from the Apocrypha there. But let's look at Daniel and see exactly what Daniel referenced to when it was talking about Greece. Daniel 2:39. Again, Daniel 2, we have Nebuchadnezzar's dream, and we get Daniel here that is interpreting the dream for Nebuchadnezzar, and he says this in the middle of his interpretation: another kingdom inferior to you shall arise after you, right? So they're inferior to you. They're smaller than you. You don't know much about them now. They're going to rise after you. And yet a third kingdom of bronze, which shall rule over all the earth. Okay, when he's talking about that third kingdom of bronze, here's what he's talking about. Okay, so we're talking to a Babylonian king. Somebody's going to come after you, Persia, and then there's going to be another kingdom that comes after Persia, Greece, that's going to rule over all the earth. And so this bronze kingdom that he's referring to is Greece. Okay, so Daniel 7, same thing. Now Daniel's having these visions, and we see more evidence to Greece that is to come. He says, in the first year of Belshazzar, the king of Babylon, Daniel saw a dream and visions of his head, and he lay in his bed. Then he wrote down the dream and told the sum of the matter. Daniel declared, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of the heaven were stirring up a great sea, and the four beasts came out of the sea, different from one another. Okay, let's talk about these beasts that came out. The first was like a lion, and it had eagle's wings. Okay, so here's a good description of that. A lion has eagle's wings. Then, as I looked, its wings were plucked off, and it was lifted from the ground and made to stand on 2 feet like a man, and the mind of a man was given to it. Okay, so we're talking about Babylon here. That's who we are. That's what we're talking about now. Verse 5, and behold, another beast, a second one, like a bear. Okay, who came after Babylon? Well, we just talked about that, Persia, right? Another one, like a bear, it was raised up on one side, and it had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth, and it was told, arise, devour much flesh. After this I looked, and behold, another, like a leopard, with 4 wings of a bird on its back. And the beast had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. So here comes another one, right? There's Greece. Here comes Greece that we're talking about. And again, I'll prove it to you that this is Greece, but he keeps talking about these kingdoms that's going to come. After Babylon, and you're going to have Persia, then you're going to have Greece, then you're going to have the Roman Empire. We're going to talk more about that later on, not in this study, but all of these that Daniel is prophesying will happen. God is telling us this will happen way before it happens. Way before it happens, right? And this isn't just like, oh, you know what, somebody's going to be in control one day. No, he's naming specific nations that have no significance right now, that they're going to be in control, and they come in control. Yeah. I just read that, right? I'm not crazy. Why didn't I do anything? All right, there we go. Daniel 8, let's go there. Because, again, we get more talk about this Greece in this weird imagery that Daniel gives all throughout. Daniel 8, I raised my eyes and saw, and behold, a ram standing on the bank of the canal. It had two horns, and both horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and the higher one came up last. And I saw a ram charging westward and northward and southward, and no beast could stand before him. And there was no one who could rescue from his power. He did as he pleased and became great. As I was considering, behold, a male goat came from the west. Again, came from the west, Macedonia, Greece, compared to Persia over here on the east side. He's coming from the west across the face of the whole earth without touching the ground. And the goat had a conspicuous horn between his eyes. He came to the ram with the two horns, which I had seen standing on the bank of the canal, and ran at him with a powerful wrath. I saw him come close to the ram, and he was enraged against him, and struck the ram and broke his two horns. And the ram had no power to stand before him, and he cast him down to the ground and trampled on him. And there was no one who could rescue the ram from his power. So it completely destroyed Persia, completely destroyed this ram. Then the goat became exceedingly great. But when he was strong, the great horn was broken, and instead of it, there came four conspicuous horns toward the four winds of heaven. So when we get towards the end of Greece, you'll know Alexander, of course, gets killed, but then his four generals are the ones that take over, and they get us further down into the intertestamental period. But it's all spoken about here, okay? How do we know we're talking about Greece? Well, here we go. As for the ram that you saw with two horns, these are the kings of Media and Persia, and the goat is the king of Greece, okay? Again, Greece is nowhere on the map right now. I mean, it's on the map, but it's not anything significant. God's saying there's going to be a king from Greece, right? Alexander, that is going to take over, right? He's going to come from the west. He's going to go all the way across the east, and he's going to take over. And the great horn between his eyes is the first king. Okay? Alexander the Great, Greece by name, well before Greece was anything of significance. A couple more passages in Daniel. Daniel 10, 18 through 20. Again, having the appearance of a man, touched me. Again, Daniel still having these visions, and strengthened me. And he said, "O man, greatly loved, fear not, peace be with you, be strong and of good courage." And he spoke to me. I was strengthened and said, "Let my Lord speak, for you have strengthened me." Then he said, "Do you know why I have come to you? But now I'll return to fight against the prince of Persia, and when I go out, behold, the prince of Greece will come." Okay? Here comes the prince of Greece. Again, we're hundreds of years before this actually happens, but God's word is saying, by name, this prince of Greece, he will come. One more, Daniel 11, 2, 3. "And now I will show you the truth. Behold, 3 more kings shall arise in Persia, and the fourth shall be far richer than all of them. And when he has become strong through his riches, he shall stir up all against the kingdom of Greece." Right? He's going to fight Greece. They're going to try to take Greece out. "Then a mighty king shall rise, who shall rule with a great dominion and do as he wills." Points exactly to Alexander the Great, right? All of this, God's telling us, is going to happen. It's going to happen, and it does happen. Now let's watch how it happens, and let's take a look at the rise of the empire. The rise of the empire. Again, we talk about Greece. We're going straight to Macedonia when we talk about the empire, and that's what we're focusing on. We consider what the Bible talks about and prophesies in Daniel, that Greece will take over. Is coming right out of Macedonia. And here are 2 people that you need to really know about Macedonia that really got them where they were. Right? Philip II, right? Philip of Macedon is also his name. Macedon. He was reigning. Both of these guys had short reigns, right? But tremendous impact. 359 and 336. Philip II was assassinated, and then his son, Alexander III, Alexander the Great, reigned for about 13 years. And within 13 years, he completely took over the world, right? was the next empire and has influenced the world in ways that still impact us today. Let's look at Philip II and see specifically about his impact. I told you already, the way you know his name, different from any other King Philip, is Philip of Macedon, is how you can know who you're talking about, Philip II. He was born 382, died 336, so not a long life, but a very impactful life. He was the 18th king of Macedonia, 18th king. So again, Macedonia had been around for some time. It didn't have much significance, but it wasn't like this new developed area that came on the map and it had been around for years and years and years. It just wasn't anything that really made a lot of noise during that time. He took over as king after his brother, Perdiccas, was killed during the Illyrian invasion. So Illyria, you'll see that on the map every once in a while. So Macedonia, of course, is up north. You got Greek, the Peloponnesian down here, and Athens and Sparta. And then you have Macedonia up here. And then to the west of it, you have Illyria. Illyria is an area, state that was constantly at war with Macedonia. And although I won't continue to share it throughout, there was always war within that Greece region. Right? All of these little states, if you will, were constantly invading one another, attacking one another, fighting with one another. So it was never any peace. It's not like all the neighbors got along. They were constantly trying to overthrow and attack. And this is how Perdiccas ended up dying because of this Illyrian attack. They come in and then they kill him, and now his younger brother Philip is put on the throne. But all of these states that are around within this Greek region, constant unrest, constant fighting, and there was way too many wars and things and battles that happened that I could even put on here. I didn't put many on here, not to confuse you, but just know during this time, there was always a battle going on. There was always an invasion. There was always somebody trying to overthrow every state that was around. But here's some of the great things about Philip of Macedon, Philip II. He laid the foundation for Alexander's great massive expansion. So a lot of what Alexander was able to do in the 13 years that he was the king is because of what his dad did. His dad set things in motion. He got things set up. He put peace in the land. He built the army that Alexander would soon use to take over and conquer everything out west. He did all of that for him. Now, he didn't get the fruit of his labors as much as his son did, but he got overshadowed. But all the work was done during his reign, Philip's reign. Part of what he did was, I mentioned the military. He built the military power with this innovative weapon. It was called a sarissa, right? Sarissa is basically a long spear. It's like a pike, 2 times as long as the spears that other people would use. And so when they would go fight people like Sparta and Athens and things like that, they would come with these little spears that they would have, and Philip and his crew, they all had thousands of these long pikes. And so as you can see, they don't even have to get close to you to kill you. And so imagine, you put a couple thousand of these guys there against these little spears, and they're dead, right? They didn't stand a chance. And that's what happened. I mean, this is how they would go to war. They would have a whole front line of guys with these long pikes, right? These sarissas, and they would just hold them out, and they would continue to march forward, and they're hitting guys way in the back of the room without even being that close. Then they would have the guys in the back rows. They would point them straight up. So any arrows that came, it was hard to really penetrate. They would almost form like this big shield over them as they pursued forward. That was more innovative than anything that they had ever had during that time of war. And so you can see Philip started this. He developed this. He built this military juggernaut, if you will. And then his son basically took the reins, and they were ready, well-trained, ready to go. So that was one of the things that he did was innovative weapons. Sarissa is the name. And then I told you that there was this constant unrest that they had, right? All of the surrounding states and areas down there from Sparta to Athens and all of that, Illyria, they were constantly fighting each other. So you could never rest because your neighbor was coming to get you, even though you were all part of the Greek region. So one thing that Philip did is he was very wise, and he decided to make allegiances with all of these surrounding states. And he developed what was called the League of Corinth. The League of Corinth was developed in 337 BC, and essentially what this was getting everybody unified together. So all of the surrounding states and areas, he basically, through whatever reasons that he could, he might have married off one of his kids, he created some type of allegiance between all of these states, and he became sort of the president of the group. And so they all were connected with him in a sense because they saw themselves as a team now, no longer fighting with one another. He's probably telling them, look, we got Persia trying to attack us. Let's all get together and let's be a team. And then I'll nominate myself as president. And they were okay with that. So he was now sort of in control, not direct control, but they all looked up to him, as you would, as the one that was the commander of the entire League of Corinth. And so that was helpful, and it ended up looking like this right here, right? So you see Macedonia up top, Kingdom of Macedonia, but all this area down here that's in the pink is part of the League of Corinth. And so he got all of these groups together, and they're all, individual states, if you will, but they're part of this league together, and he is considered the president. And so he gets them all unified together, minimizes the attacks that they're going to have on them because we're a family now. We're a team. We're a league. As you can see, Sparta, they were the one rebellion. They're like, no, we're not joining in on that. And so they had their own thing going on, but Philip had enough built around him that he didn't have to worry about the attacks. Still got the attacks from Illyria, right? They're still on that western side, as you can see. They had conquered them at that point in time, but they're still fighting against them. They weren't part of that League of Corinth that's in the pink there. So this is the kingdom at the end of Philip's death. A couple other things to note. Wish I had my pointer that was working. I guess I'm tall enough to do this. This is weird. I don't know if you can see this. But so you see this area, it's called Crenides, is right there where I'm pointing. It's right below Philippi. So Crenides is an area that he conquered, and he conquered that area, and he changed the name after him to Philippi. Philippi sounds familiar, right? And so you have Paul, why this is unique to the Bible. Of course, Paul, he's in Acts, he gets the Macedonian call. He goes over to this region of Macedonia. The first city he visits is Philippi, right? He visits Philippi. Well, Philippi used to be called what is it? Crenides, that's what I said. That's not even how you say it. Crenides. I wrote it down. These words are tricky. Crenides, that's how you say it. He changed the name from Crenides to Philippi, naming it after him. So can you imagine, like, if that was, I don't know what you would call it, turn to the book of the Crenins or something like that, right? Crenins chapter 1 instead of Philippians, right? That's what I'm trying to get at. But it's significant to our Bible because he changed the name. He conquered that city, changed the name to Philippi, and then, of course, later on, that becomes the first place that Paul goes to, and we get the book of Philippians. Why is it Philippians? Because it's named after Philip, right? Philip II is where we get the name Philippi from, Philippians, where we get one of our New Testament books. So you have that area that he took over that's there. But I want you to notice Persia is still all over here, right? And so he gets to the border of Persia, but he never gets over, right? He's fighting Persia all throughout, never conquers anything in Persia, and that's where he ends. So Persia is still where they are, but he's gotten most of this area in what we call Greece conquered and kind of in control between the League of Corinth and the areas that he's conquered. So he's doing well. He's got some peace, some areas that he's in control of by the time he hands over the reins to his son. Crenides. First Crenides. It might have been First Crenides, chapter 1. I don't know. Who knows? We don't have to worry about that because he changed the name. Thank you, Philip. last thing to know about him is he died by assassination. And here's the thing that is, when you get this so far deep down in the history, we don't know exactly. There's a lot of rumors of, he was killed by Alexander because Alexander wanted to take the throne. He was killed by somebody. We don't know. There's no really true understanding of how he died, but he was assassinated at some point. He was killed either in battle or at some type of party that he was at. Somebody slipped his drink or whatever. He ended up dying, and once he died, Alexander takes the throne. But he was the one that set the stage. Really gets overshadowed by Alexander, but he did a lot of paving the way for his son Alexander to then take over and really conquer that part of the known world during the time. Let me just show you this map before I get into Alexander, because I want you to see again. He's born in Pella, okay, Macedonia. That's where Alexander's born. From there, he goes over, and what his father did not do during his time, really get into that Asia Minor area and get into what Persia had conquered. He was able to get over in there right away, right? And so he goes west, and he goes throughout the Asia Minor. And at this point in time, he defeated the Persian troops in 334, defeated King Darius. And in 333, so now the Persian king is gone, and Alexander is the one that is on the move, and he's taken over. So he goes through Asia Minor, and then he goes south. He goes straight down to Egypt, okay? So he's going down. You see him pass through Gaza, and he gets down to Egypt, and the Egyptians see him as sort of this earthly god, if you will. He's coming through, and he's just taking over everything, and he even renames or starts Alexandria, right? That gets developed. Alexandria, Egypt, still to this day. Alexander goes down there, he conquers that land, and he renames that city Alexandria that you see throughout that time. And then he makes his way back out of Egypt, and he goes west all the way as far as India, right? So he's going all the way there, and at some point in time, the story has it that his soldiers just had enough, right? They're worn out, right? It's 13 years he's conquering all of this. They're fighting probably, every other day, if not all the time, constantly fighting. Soldiers are worn out, and so they start to head back. And when they head back, then Alexander gets sick with an illness, and he ends up dying in Babylon. So didn't make it all the way back, but he dies in Babylon at the age of 32, 33, somewhere in there. So he made a lot of action happen within a small point of time, but a lot of it is because of what his father did. Let's talk about him, Alexander, and learn some more about him. You know him, better known as Alexander the Great, right? But Alexander the Third of Macedon is who he is, born in Pella. But Alexander the Great, 356 BC, and then he died in 323 BC. So again, 33 years at best, some say 32, somewhere he died at a young age. Took the throne at the age of 20 from his father, and he did what his father couldn't do, right? He overthrew the Persian Empire. His father got to the tip of it, but never really conquered there, but he did. But within 13 years, again, went through all this, conquered far west all the way to India. He was built to be someone special. His father had him trained up by the great philosopher Aristotle from the age of 13 to 16. I thought that was interesting, right? He's trying to breed him to be someone great. He gets the greatest philosopher during that time to come be the personal tutor for his son, and he used it. This is something you may not know, but he's in every statue with Alexander. Is Bucephalus, is his horse. And this horse was famous. This horse is part of most statues that you see of Alexander the Great, or most pictures. You see this horse. Well, it's the same horse, Bucephalus, that was part of the reason why they knew Alexander was going to be different. Bucephalus, let me tell you a little bit about this horse, just so you'll know him when you see him. You're not going to see him, but you see a statue of him. But this horse, when Alexander was a kid, this was the most prized possession horse based on the breed, and this horse was just, it couldn't be tamed, right? You have all these people that try to tame the horse and domesticate him, and they just couldn't do it. Well, they gave the horse to Alexander, saying, oh, you want to give it a shot, essentially, go ahead and give it a shot. Well, Alexander spent time with this horse, and he was able to break this horse that no one else could break. Even the most trained professionals could not break this horse, and Alexander broke the horse. And Alexander's dad, Philip, when he broke the horse, looked at him and basically said, Macedonia, that's not going to be big enough for you. The way you're designed and developed and the way you operate and the power that you have mentally and to be able to do things, you're going to need a lot bigger empire than just Macedonia. So you should probably start to set your eyes on something bigger. And he did, right? That was supposedly quoted that his father told him that the moment that he broke this horse that nobody else could. And so this horse was this prized possession that he then had for the rest of his reign, for most of it, until the horse died. So every battle he would go into, he would be riding on this horse, and you see pictures of this black stallion horse that he had. He loved this horse so much, and it meant so much to him. Way on this side, in close to India, right, which is modern-day Pakistan, they have this city that's now called Jhelum, but Bucephala is what Alexander named that city. That's where his horse died. So his horse died there when they were going way to India, and the horse meant so much to him that city was known for the longest time as Alexandria Bucephala. And now it's changed, but it's in Pakistan. So he named this city after his horse because it meant so much to him. But every time you see that horse, just know that it was significant. And when he first tamed that horse, it was a big deal. It wasn't just like, oh, you got a new horse, puppy. Now, puppy, what? That's not even a thing. You got a new horse, whatever, a horse. Nobody has a horse as a pet. That's all I was trying to say, horse pet. It's kind of like a puppy to him. He loved it. And he took it to battle, and he won many battles riding Bucephalus, the same horse. He built Alexandria, in Egypt. So I told you that about already, right? He takes over this whole land. He goes all the way out there. As you can see now, he goes all the way out west to India, and then his horse dies. He names the city after that. He comes all the way back to Babylonia, and that's where he dies at. But he starts off at Pella, and he goes all the way out, taking over areas, Alexandria, and renaming them. But there's the rise of the empire, right? He took over the world in a short period of time. But what's important to be reminded of is God said this was going to happen. This is unheard of. Never have we seen anything at the speed of something like this from something so small and insignificant as Macedonia, but God said it would happen, and he made it very clear, and here comes Alexander the Great to make that happen through all of what his father, Philip II, had paved the way for him. So that's the rise of the empire, and that's what we're going to get to today, so I'll put a pause in that. And I mentioned this before, but we'll get to this more next time. After Alexander dies, and he has these 4 generals that basically take over, and they all have their little sections of land, and they start to be the power, right? They start to continue the Greek Empire after Alexander. And so we get a lot of Greek influence, and you'll start to see a lot of what happens that went on into the Roman Empire. Then we call it the Hellenistic, right? Hellen means Greek, right? And so basically everything is getting Greekified, if you will. A lot of that culture and influence that we still have today, it came from what Alexander started and then what his 4 generals in these little areas that they all took control of happened after that to lead us into the intertestamental period and more into the New Testament. So we'll get into this divided Greek empire the next time that we study this, and it'll take us closer and closer to the New Testament so you get a better understanding of how this, from the secular side of things, tracks with the Bible and helps us understand more about God's Word and how in control He is of all things. So let me pray, and then we'll conclude this. God, thank you for this study on Greece. And Lord, as I mentioned at the outset, I know this is a lot of history, just understanding what's going on outside of just biblical truths that we know. But Lord, I pray that this would encourage us all to know that you are in full control. You are sovereign. God, there's nothing that happens in this world, not one detail, not one breath that anyone takes that that happens apart from you willing it to happen. And Lord, I'm so grateful that we can trust you and know that everything is in your control. Doesn't matter what king or president or political power is at the helm. Lord, you're ultimately the one that's in control. We know that you move people like streams of water. You tell us that in your word, and we can see that here, where you have places that are insignificant at the time that they start, turn into the world empire, but because you said it would, and you ultimately are using that to advance your plan and your kingdom, all for your glory. So help us to trust more in you, knowing that whatever happens, you're in control of it, and I pray that it would draw us closer to you, to trust more in you, and continue to live out what you call us to do in this world as long as we're here until you call us home. So thank you for the study this morning, and I pray that you were pleased with it all and that you be glorified through our lives. In Jesus' name, amen.